I thought this was an amazing quote. Nancy Pelosi said, I just can't resist putting this up here. We have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. Now, what it seems like is going on now is not only are we supposed to not read the bill, we're supposed to not vote for the bill. So we want to pass a bill that we haven't read and haven't voted for. This seems to be really twisting the long arm of conscience a little bit to say, not only you're not supposed to read it, but now you can't vote for it, and we still want to pass it. And we wonder why the American public is just a teensy bit skeptical. I think some of the shenanigans are amazing. One of the ideas is you have to get an assessment as to how much the bill is going to cost. And there's a government accounting office that they're supposed to be impartial, and they take a look at a bill and they go all through it and figure out what they think it's going to cost. Well, one of the tricks that they're playing is they're going to collect taxes for the bill over a 10-year period, but they're only going to count the bill being in effect for 6 years. Now, that's kind of an amazing way to calculate what the bill is going to cost, because the implication is it's going to be, that's what it'll be running along at. And the thing is that every time the government's got into this taking over of the medical system, anytime we do a bill like Medicaid or Medicare, it always costs at least 2 times more than ever any accountant thought it was going to be, sometimes as much as 10 times more expensive than what some accounting office says. And yet we're going to start off with this, smoke and mirrors deal where we're going to tax people 10 years but only run the bill 6, and that's supposed to be how you figure out that it costs $1 trillion. And I think that's what you're referring to. But the other thing is, you're a doctor. Let me just ask you this question. Sure. What happens if you keep cutting the money to Medicare? What's going to happen to people?
Well, I'll remind the gentleman that currently physicians in hospitals are being paid 80 cents on the dollar. And the mystery that seems to be out there and very few people are addressing is, and you hear the other side talking about the rapid rise of private insurance cost. Well, one of the main reasons for that is to offset the shortfall in the Medicare payments to doctors and hospitals. So private insurance is having to make up the difference. So obviously...
So let me stop you, because you know this stuff cold, but there may be some people that are some of our other members here that just don't know this well. So you've got Medicare, which is reimbursing doctors at 80 cents on the dollar,
yes,
which means somebody got to make up the 20 cents. So we do a cost shift and shift that 20 cents in the Medicare and dump that cost onto people who have private insurance, right?
That is correct.
So we're really charging them some amount more, whatever their bill was. If it was $100, we're going to add a little extra to that to compensate for the Medicare thing. So now you're driving the cost up for the guy that's really doing what we think is responsible, and that is going out, making sure he has insurance, and he buys insurance in the private market, but he's paying a premium for that insurance because he's got to cover Medicare that's underfunded. So that's the first thing. Is that right? Do I have that right?
That is absolutely correct, and that is not considering Medicaid, which pays more like 30 cents on the dollar, which under this bill will increase by 30%. The number of people covered, that is. So
let's just say, for instance, we wanted to cut more money out of Medicare. Let's say we're going to take $500 billion, but just theoretically, if you drop the money in Medicare, so we're putting less money into it, what's the net effect of that going to be on the person that's counting on Medicare to pay for their medical care, and to the usually older person that is counting on Medicare to cover their doctor's bills? What's going to happen then?
It will cut access off to them for health care, and I can prove it.
Oh, wait, you're saying it will cut access, yes, for older people to Medicare?
Yes.
Okay, can you explain that?
All right. Well, if doctors and hospitals are under-reimbursed further, they're at their limit today. If the cuts go even further, and of course $500 billion is draconian by any stretch of the imagination, that's as much as the entire annual budget for Medicare. If you cut it that much, then doctors will have to opt out of Medicare altogether, and the senior citizens won't have doctors to go to.
Okay, so let me just see if I get this right. You're a medical doctor. You went all through med school. You've been practicing a number of years. You enjoy what you're doing. Old people come to you that need medical attention. You don't mind treating them. And before you were treating them at 80% of what the cost is. But let's say we drop down how much Medicare is paying. Well, at a certain point, you're just saying, I just can't afford to do this at this price. Because ultimately, you've got to run an office. You've got to hire people. You've got to pay the rent on the building and all of those kinds of things. You've got a lot of insurance you're paying for. And you're trying to provide for your family. And at a certain point, Medicare is reimbursing so little that you basically say, hey, the old people I've been seeing before, I'm going to keep them on because I'm a nice guy, but I'm not going to take any new people. Right. And so some old person that's sick wants to go find a doctor, perhaps they've moved or something like that, and everybody says, sorry, I'm not seeing any new Medicare patients. Right. So while they've got Medicare, it doesn't mean they've got health care, yes. And so they don't get any health care.
Absolutely.
And so that's the problem with it.
Absolutely. And again, it was only a month or so ago that the Mayo Clinic, I believe in their branch in Arizona, announced that they were taking no further Medicare patients, and that's under the current pay system, not under this one.
So this new bill is going to pull $500 billion out of Medicare.
Yes.
So that's just for, if you know nothing else about the bill, this is saying, well, this is something to pay attention to. Now, we haven't talked about some of the other nifty features. Now, this is what gets me worried. This is what I don't like the most. And I don't like this bill. I want to be completely clear. I'm a conservative Republican. I do not trust big government to do a lot of stuff. And particularly, I don't want them meddling in our health care. So I'm not, I guess, objective, or I am objective, but it's just because we talk about how bad it is to have an insurance agent between you and your doctor. The last thing I want is a government bureaucrat or thousands of government bureaucrats between me and my doctor. This is a picture we've seen and used on the floor sometimes, but this is a very much simplified version of thousands of pages of legislation with shall, which means the government's going to do all of this stuff. And somehow you're supposed to, as a consumer of health care, you're supposed to find your way all the way across over to the doctor over there. This is like some sort of a maze that you've got to go through. And so this is a very complicated government takeover of what is otherwise the private system of health provision in this country. And so that, to me, is something that really causes me to say no on this bill. Because as Republicans, we don't like anything that gets between the doctor and the patient. And insurance companies, we don't like it when they get in there. But at least if you have a bad insurance company, you have a chance of changing your insurance company. What happens if you've got all these bureaucrats in there? You never change it.
Right.
And so this thing is really a very, very dangerous piece of legislation, in my opinion. But